Do all men cheat? Is that really true? Is there any man who can commit to a relationship and not cheat? Seriously, I'm losing faith every day. I think of a bad experience, a horrible surprise, and one day I find myself asking myself this. Why does my parrot keep repeating Linda, Linda, Linda nonstop, like a broken record? And I'm here in the kitchen, watching this bird repeat this name that isn't mine, while my husband, Mark, is there sweating, literally sweating, saying that the bird is crazy, that parrots only learn random words from TV or something like that. But I know that's not true, because our parrot, Mango, is a South American parrot. He's intelligent, very intelligent. He doesn't repeat random sounds. He repeats things he hears frequently, things that are said in our house several times. And nobody in this house is called Linda. Nobody we know is called Linda. I also know that Linda is a word of compliment in South America, Latinos, Central America, and some Latina women who live here in America. I see men calling women that. It's a compliment to their bodies and beauty. So why is Mango sitting on the perch saying, Linda, I love you too. Good night, Linda. Let me know, Linda. These aren't random phrases, and he even speaks with a Latin accent. I don't know if it's Spanish or Portuguese. I don't quite understand, but it's not what he naturally says. These are things someone says to a specific person, intimate things, affectionate things. And Mark is there trying to tell me I'm exaggerating, trying to tell me that birds are unpredictable and that I shouldn't give it so much importance. But my hands are trembling because I know. I know there's something very, very wrong here. And Mango keeps calling Linda, Linda, Linda. And I look at Mark and ask who the hell Linda is, and he says he doesn't know. He swears he doesn't know. Maybe he heard it somewhere. Maybe it's from a movie or a song. And I'm like, what movie? What song? Tell me a movie or song where someone says, I love you too, Linda. Good night, Linda. And he can't. Mark just stands there looking guilty, and when he gets up, he's looking for some nonsensical excuse. Then he paces back and forth, and Mango keeps talking, and I feel like I'm going crazy. But one thing I know, you can say whatever you want with your mouth, whatever lie you can manage, but your body tells the truth. Your body gives away your expressions. And Mark is acting very strangely. He doesn't act like this. I need to stop for a second because even now, months later, remembering that moment makes my heart race. Makes me feel the same panic I was standing in my kitchen when I realized my husband was lying to me. Yes, it's true. I'll give you the spoiler, no problem. But okay, some people just want to come here thinking it's just another made-up video and will comment that women will separate from all men who cheat so they'll grow old, alone, and single. I know, most people think that way, but I don't need to accept that. Let me tell you this whole insane story from the beginning because I promise you've never heard anything like it. This goes beyond betrayal, beyond an extramarital affair. It's something much worse and much crazier now that when I tell people, they literally don't believe me. At first, they think I'm making it up, but I'm not. This really happened. This is my real life. And it's the most devastating and shocking thing that has ever happened to me. So, my name is Rachel. That's not my real name, obviously, but I'm using that name to send this email to the channel so they can tell this story. I am 38 years old, and it all started about a year ago, beginning in 2024. I don't remember the exact month, but I'll start by reminiscing and telling you. I live in Ocala, Florida, in Marion County, in a perfect house, a wonderful property that's like a small farm or ranch, whichever you prefer. We have many fruit trees, orange and mango trees, and also animals, chickens, goats, horses, and pets. We have 3 dogs, 2 cats, and Mango, our 5-year-old parrot. We got him from a breeder when he was a chick, and he's been with us ever since. He talks a lot. He says good morning, he says I love you, he says beautiful bird, he says a lot of things. We love him. He's always very funny, dancing when he hears pop music. He's part of our family. and I never imagined that he would be responsible for exposing my husband's double life. Mark and I met 12 years ago in Kansas. We're both originally from Kansas. It's a good state to live in. And we met at a work conference since we both worked in the same field at the time. We hit it off, started dating, and after about 3 years, we got married. We had a beautiful wedding with all our family and friends, and we were happy, or at least I thought we were. We talked about having children, but it never happened. We tried for a few years and nothing, and eventually we accepted that it would just be the two of us, and that was fine. We focused on building our life together. About 6 years ago, Mark received a great job offer in Florida, a consulting position at an architecture firm. He said he could work from home, that we could buy a property, own land, raise animals, live a quiet and peaceful life, away from the cold Kansas winters. I loved the idea. I always wanted to live somewhere warm, somewhere with space. We considered South Florida, but when I visited Miami, I hated the traffic. So we moved to Ocala, bought a 4-acre property with a house and a barn, renovated everything, made it our own, planted fruit trees, got the animals, and it was perfect. It was everything I ever wanted. This peaceful life on our little farm with my husband and our animals, and I thought we would grow old together there. I thought that was it, that this would be our home forever. About 3 years ago, I received a great opportunity. I work in airport operations. I'm a consultant. Basically, I help airports improve their systems and processes. And Miami International Airport contacted me. They needed someone to do a specific consulting job, a temporary 4-month contract, and the pay was very good indeed. I talked to Mark about it, and he said I should accept that it was a great opportunity, that 4 months would fly by, and that he would take care of everything. I asked if he was sure, since Miami was about 4 hours away and I couldn't commute every day. He said he knew that I could rent a studio or small apartment there, something simple, for 4 months, that we'd figure something out, and that he'd visit me on weekends. And I thought, okay, I really hated Miami on my first visit, and this should teach me a lesson. But 4 months isn't that long, and the money would really help us, actually. Correcting my sentence, I didn't hate Miami. I hated the traffic and the irresponsible drivers. At least the places we visited were bad experiences and there were almost accidents every minute. But Miami is a beautiful place. Cheerful people, cheerful music. Very noisy, yes, but they're cheerful. Wonderful sunsets. So the job opportunity was good. I decided to accept and face this challenge alone in that famous place. The good thing is that we could pay off some debts, make some improvements to the property. So I said yes. I accepted the job. I found a small and charming studio apartment near the airport, a good location for traffic. Further south of the airport, it narrows onto the 95 highway. So I found a good place, nothing luxurious, but it was clean, cozy, and close to work. And I moved there. Mark stayed in Ocala, taking care of the property and the animals and working as a consultant from home. But look, the 4-month contract was extended. I was doing a great job and they kept renewing it, asking me to stay longer. And I stayed because the hourly rate was very good and the overtime helped even more, doubling the pay for each hour worked. The work was interesting, and Miami International Airport is huge. There's always something to do, always problems to solve. The 4 months turned into 6, then a year, then 18 months, and now it's been almost 2 years. 2 years living in Miami during the week and going back to Ocala on weekends to see Mark, or Mark coming to Miami to see me. It's been hard, very hard living apart like this, but Mark kept telling me not to worry, that we were earning well, paying off the debts, and that my job could end at any moment, that they might not renew my contract. So it didn't make sense to sell the property and move to Miami. Miami is crazy, the traffic is insane, everyone is stressed and rushing all the time. Ocala is peaceful, we have space, we have our animals. We are gonna keep doing what we're doing. We were doing that, and I believed him. I thought he was being smart and practical. I thought he was right in saying that we shouldn't change our whole lives for a job that might be temporary.
So I kept renewing my contract. I kept living in Miami during the week. I kept coming back to Ocala on weekends. And Mark kept saying he was fine, that he was busy with work and taking care of the property, that he had a lot to do, that he didn't feel alone, that everything was fine.
But things weren't good, very bad indeed, and I had absolutely no idea what Mark was doing while I was 4 hours away, working myself to death in Miami. And it makes me so angry, so unbelievably angry thinking about how he encouraged me to stay in Miami, how he kept saying, "Don't move back, your job is going well, we need the money," when really, he wanted me gone. He wanted me 4 hours away so he could live his secret life, so he could be with her, with Linda. And I feel so stupid, so incredibly stupid for not seeing it, for not questioning why he was so supportive of me staying in Miami, why he never complained about me being gone, why he seemed so happy and content every time I came home for the weekend. Of course he was happy. He was getting away with everything. He was living a double life, and I had no idea. I was working 60-hour weeks trying to support us financially, while he was playing house with another woman in our home. Mango started saying Linda about 2 months ago. I noticed it one weekend when I came home from Miami. I walked in the door on a Friday night and Mango was on his perch and he said, "Linda." And I was like, "What?" And Mark laughed and said, "Oh yeah, he's been saying that lately. I don't know where he picked it up. Weird, right?" And I said, "Yeah, that's weird." And I didn't think much of it at first. I figured Mark was right. Parrots just say random stuff sometimes. But then Mango kept saying it, kept saying, "Linda, Linda, Linda," and then he started saying full sentences. "I love you too, Linda. Good night, Linda. Let me know, Linda." And I started getting suspicious. I started thinking, okay, this isn't random. This is something Mango hears regularly. This is something someone says in this house. And the only people in this house are me and Mark. And I'm not saying these things. So Mark must be. Mark must be talking to someone named Linda. And I asked him about it. I said, "Mark, who's Linda? Why is Mango saying this name?" And he got defensive. He said, "I don't know. Stop being paranoid. The bird just talks." And I said, "Birds don't just make up full sentences. He's repeating something he hears. So who is Linda?" And Mark said, "Maybe it's from the TV. Maybe it's from a show I watch." And I said, "What show?" And he couldn't name one. He just got angry and said, "Why are you interrogating me about a bird?" And I backed off because I didn't want to fight. But I started paying more attention, started watching Mark more closely, started noticing things I'd missed before.
You're probably thinking I should have confronted him harder right then and there, but honestly, I was scared. I was scared of what I might find out, scared that my suspicions were right and my marriage was falling apart. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. I found someone online, a PI in Ocala, and I called him and I explained the situation. I said, "My Parrot keeps saying another woman's name and my husband is acting weird and I think something's going on." And the PI, his name was Steve, he said, "Okay, I can help you. I'll follow your husband to see what he's doing during the week when you're in Miami." And I said, okay, please do that. I need to know the truth. And Steve said, "It'll take about a week or two to gather enough information." And I said, "Fine, just find out what's happening." So I paid him his retainer fee and I went back to Miami and I tried to focus on work, but I couldn't. I was checking my phone constantly, waiting for updates from Steve. And after about 10 days, Steve called me and said, "We need to meet. I have information you need to see." And my stomach just dropped. I knew whatever he found was bad, really bad. So I drove to Ocala on a Wednesday, took a day off work, and I met Steve at a coffee shop, and he pulled out this folder full of photos and documents, and he said, "I'm sorry, but your husband is living with another woman." And I just stared at him. I couldn't process what he was saying. Living with her? Not just having an affair, but living with her? And Steve said, "Yes, her name is Linda Martinez. She's from Brazil originally. She's 32 years old. She has 2 kids, and she's been living in your house with your husband for about 18 months. And I felt like I was going to pass out. I felt like the room was spinning. 18 months? That's a year and a half. That's almost the entire time I've been working in Miami. And Steve showed me the photos of Mark and Linda together. together, photos of them grocery shopping, photos of them with her kids at the park, photos of them at her house, my house, holding hands and kissing and acting like a couple. And I just started crying. Right there in the coffee shop, I started sobbing. And Steve said, there's more. There's something else you need to know. And I was like, what? What else could there possibly be? And he said, Linda thinks she's married to Mark, legally married. He showed her a marriage certificate. She thinks you're his ex-wife. She thinks he's divorced from you and married to her now. And I said, what? That's not possible. You can't just marry someone when you're already married. And Steve said, exactly. That's bigamy. That's a federal crime. And your husband committed it. This is probably going to sound insane, but I actually laughed when Steve told me that. I laughed because it was so absurd, so completely crazy that my brain couldn't process it as real. My husband committed bigamy. My husband is a bigamist? Those words sounded fake, like something from a movie or a crime show, not something that happens in real life, not something that happens to me, but it was real. It was happening. Mark had somehow convinced Linda that they were legally married. He'd shown her fake documents, fake marriage certificate, made her believe she was his wife, and she believed him. She moved into our house with her 2 kids and played house with my husband, thinking she was the legitimate wife, thinking I was the ex who left him because of work. And meanwhile, I'm in Miami, working 60-hour weeks, thinking my husband is home alone, taking care of our property, when really, he's living with his fake wife and her kids in my house, sleeping in my bed, using my kitchen, living the life I thought we were building together, except with someone else. Steve said, there's one more thing, one more piece of information I need to tell you. And I said, okay, what? At this point, nothing can shock me. And he said, Linda has 2 kids with Mark. She gave birth to his daughter 2 years ago and his son 8 months ago. And that broke me. That completely destroyed me because I couldn't have kids. Mark and I tried for years and it never happened, and we accepted that we wouldn't be parents, but apparently Mark didn't accept it. Apparently he just decided to have kids with someone else, with Linda, and now he has a 2-year-old daughter and an 8-month-old son that I didn't know existed. And I'm sitting there in this coffee shop looking at photos of my husband with these children, his children, holding them and smiling and looking so happy. And I realize he's not just a cheater. He's not just a liar. He's a completely different person than I thought he was. He's built an entire second life, an entire second family. And I had no idea, and I feel like the biggest fool in the world.
Can I just say, and I know this might sound petty, but I don't care. Linda is young and pretty in that obvious way. She's got long dark hair and a big smile and curves in all the right places. She's exactly the type of woman men notice. And seeing her in those photos, seeing her with Mark, with my Mark, it made me feel so inadequate, so old and undesirable, like I wasn't enough for him, like he needed someone younger and prettier and more fertile. And I hate that I felt that way. I hate that I compared myself to her, but I did. I couldn't help it. And it hurt. It hurt so much, knowing that Mark looked at me every day and thought about her, knowing that he was with her 4 or 5 days a week and then came to Miami for the weekend and pretended everything was normal, pretended he loved me and missed me and couldn't wait to see me, when really he was probably counting the hours until he could go back to Ocala and be with her. Steve told me how it started. He'd done a Veep investigation, talked to neighbors, looked at records, pieced together the timeline. And apparently Mark hired Linda to clean our house about 2.5 years ago, right after I started the Miami job. He told the neighbors he needed help keeping up with the property since I was gone during the week. And Linda came once a week to clean and then twice a week. And then she started cooking for him too, making meals and putting them in the freezer. And Mark started giving her big tips, really big tips, hundreds of dollars for a day's work. And he'd compliment her, tell her she was beautiful, tell her she had a great smile, tell her she cooked better than anyone he'd ever met. And Linda, she was vulnerable. She was in the U.S. on a work visa that was about to expire. She was worried about going back to Brazil, worried about staying illegal in the U.S. without valid status. She had mentioned to Mark that she was scared of the government changes, scared of being deported. And Mark saw an opportunity. He saw a woman who was desperate and scared, and he used that. He told her he could help her. He could sponsor her visa. He could marry her and make her legal. And all she had to do was be with him, love him, take care of him because his wife, me, his actual legal wife, had abandoned him for work in Miami, left him alone and lonely in this big house, and Linda believed him. She believed his lies. She believed I was the bad wife who chose work over marriage, and Mark was the poor husband who just needed love and companionship. And she fell for it. She fell for him, and he married her. Fake married her, showed her fake documents, had a fake ceremony with her friends as witnesses, and she thought it was real. She thought she was Mrs. Mark Thompson. She thought her kids would be American citizens. She thought she was safe and legal and loved. Now here's where it gets even crazier, even more twisted, because I started thinking about the timeline, started putting pieces together, and I realized Linda was at our 15th anniversary party. Yes, we had a 15th anniversary party in 2023. A friend of ours encouraged us to celebrate since we'd been married for 15 years. We hired a catering company to do a buffet, and Linda worked that event. She was one of the servers. And then she worked another event for us, our Thanksgiving dinner in 2023, and then our Thanksgiving again in 2024. She was there serving food and drinks. She was in my house on my anniversary, celebrating my marriage to Mark, while secretly sleeping with him, while already believing she was married to him. And I remember her. I remember thinking she was nice. She had a beautiful smile, she was polite and professional. I even gave her a big tip because I liked to bless people who helped us. I liked to be generous with people who worked for us. And the whole time she was sleeping with my husband, the whole time she was living in my house during the week, raising her kids in my home. And I had no idea. I smiled at her and thanked her for her service and handed her money, and she probably thought I was the ex-wife, the fool who let Mark get away. And it makes me sick. It makes me physically ill thinking about it. Thinking about how many times she was in my house, how many times she smiled at me while knowing she was with my husband, how she must have laughed about it with Mark, how they must have thought they were so clever getting away with it.
I left the coffee shop with Steve and I drove to my house, my actual house in Ocala. And I parked down the street, and I just sat there for a minute trying to decide what to do. Do I go in there and confront them? Do I call the police? Do I call a lawyer? What do I do? And finally, I decided I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to see them together. So I walked up to my house that I paid for, that I helped buy, and I just opened the front door and walked in. And there they were, Mark and Linda, sitting on the couch watching TV. And there were kids' toys everywhere, little trucks and dolls and coloring books, and there were photos on the walls, photos of Mark and Linda and the kids, photos that replaced the photos of me and Mark. And Linda looked up and saw me, and her face went white, completely white. And she said, "Who are you? What are you doing in our house?" And I said, "Our house? This is my house. I'm Rachel. I'm Mark's wife, his actual legal wife." And Linda looked at Mark and said, "What is she talking about? You said you were divorced. You said she left you." And Mark just sat there frozen, didn't say a word. And I said, "He lied to you, Linda. He's still married to me. We're still married. He committed bigamy. He fake married you." And Linda started crying. She said, No, that's not true. We're married. We have a certificate. We have witnesses." And I said, "It's fake. It's all fake. You can't marry someone who's already married. That's illegal. That's a federal crime." And she said, No, this can't be happening." And she looked at Mark and said, "Tell her she's wrong. Tell her we're really married." And Mark finally spoke and said, "I'm sorry, Linda. I'm sorry." And Linda just screamed. She actually screamed and said, "You lied to me. You used me. I have your children. I gave you children, and you lied to me." And Mark said, I know, I'm sorry." And Linda grabbed her kids, grabbed her stuff, and she ran out of the house, got in her car, and drove away. And it was just me and Mark standing there in the living room of our house that wasn't ours anymore. It was theirs. It was Mark and Linda's house. I was the stranger now. And Mark looked at me and said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I never meant for it to go this far." And I said, "How far did you mean for it to go, Mark? You married her. You had kids with her. You built an entire life with her. How far was too far?" And he said, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I was lonely. You were gone all the time." And I said, "So this is my fault? You committed bigamy because I was working to support us?" And he said, No, that's not what I mean." And I said, Get out of this house right now." And he said, "This is my house too." And I said, "No, this is my house. I paid for half of it, and you used it to commit a federal crime, so get out before I call the police.
Sorry, I'm stopping the recording quick. Someone just knocked on the door. Okay, I'm back. It was just a package delivery. So, Mark left. He packed a bag and left. And I sat down in that living room, surrounded by evidence of his double life, photos of him with Linda and their kids, toys and baby bottles and all this stuff that wasn't supposed to be there, and I just cried. I cried for hours. I cried for my marriage, for the life I thought I had, for the 15 years I spent with a man I didn't actually know. And I called my sister, and I told her everything, and she was shocked. Absolutely shocked. She said, "You need to call a lawyer right now. You need to report him to the police. Bigamy is a federal crime. He needs to face consequences." And I said, "I know, I will. I just need a minute to process this, to figure out what I'm gonna do." And she said, "Okay, but don't wait too long. Don't let him get away with this." And I said, "I won't. I promise I won't." I hired a lawyer the next day, a really good divorce lawyer who specialized in complex cases, and I told him everything. Showed him all the evidence Steve had gathered, the photos, the documents, the fake marriage certificate, everything. And my lawyer said, "This is one of the most insane cases I've ever seen. Your husband is going to be in serious trouble. Bigamy is a federal offense. He could go to prison." And I said, "Good, he deserves it." And my lawyer said, "We need to report this to the FBI. They handle bigamy cases." And I said, "Okay, do it." So my lawyer contacted the FBI, and they opened an investigation. And they interviewed me, interviewed Linda, interviewed Mark, interviewed neighbors and friends and anyone who had information. And it took about 3 months, but eventually they had enough evidence to charge Mark with bigamy, with fraud, with a bunch of other charges I don't even fully understand. And he was arrested. Yes, my husband was arrested by federal agents and charged with multiple felonies. And it was all over the local news. Man arrested for bigamy, living double life with 2 wives. And I was humiliated. I was so humiliated that everyone knew, that everyone was talking about how stupid I was for not knowing. But my lawyer said, "This isn't your fault. You were working, you trusted your husband, you had no reason to suspect he was living with another woman. This is all on him." And I tried to believe that, tried to tell myself I wasn't stupid. I was just trusting. But it was hard, really hard. Linda called me a few weeks after everything came out. She called me crying and apologizing, saying she had no idea Mark was still married, saying she thought I was his ex-wife. She thought everything was legitimate. She said Mark showed her divorce papers, showed her a marriage certificate, had a ceremony with a fake officiant who was actually just his friend pretending to be a judge. She said she never would have been with him if she'd known the truth. And I wanted to hate her. I wanted to blame her for everything, but I couldn't. I couldn't hate her because she was a victim too. Mark lied to both of us. He used both of us. He destroyed both of our lives for his own selfish desires. And Linda was in an even worse position than me because she has 2 kids with him. 2 kids who are going to grow up knowing their father is a criminal, a bigamist, a liar. And she has no legal status in the U.S. Her visa is expired. She's here illegally now because Mark never actually sponsored her like he promised. It was all lies, all fake. And she might be deported, sent back to Brazil with 2 American kids who have an American father in federal prison. And it's a mess. It's such a complete mess, and I feel bad for her. I really do. She didn't deserve this. Neither of us did. The divorce is almost finalized now. It's been about 8 months since they found out about everything. And Mark is facing trial for his crimes. His lawyer is trying to get him a plea deal, but it's not looking good. The evidence is overwhelming. He admitted to everything. He has no defense. He's probably going to prison for a few years. And honestly, I don't care. I don't care what happens to him. He destroyed 2 women's lives. He destroyed his kids' lives, his own kids who are going to grow up without a father.
because he couldn't control himself, because he had to have everything. 2 wives, 2 lives, 2 families. And now he has nothing. He has no wives, no families, no freedom, just consequences.
I moved back to Ocala full-time. I couldn't stay in Miami after everything that happened. I needed to be in my house, in my space, with my animals. And my job understood. They let me work remotely from Ocala, and I'm grateful for that. Grateful that I don't have to be away from home anymore. And Mango is still here with me, my parrot who exposed everything, who started saying, "Linda, Linda, Linda," and made me question what was happening in my house. And every time he says it now, I don't get upset. I just thank him. I say, "Good boy, Mango, thank you for telling me the truth. Thank you for being smarter than I was." And he tilts his head and says, "Pretty bird." And I laugh because he is a pretty bird. He's a smart bird. He's my hero bird. And I bought him the biggest cage I could find, filled it with toys and treats, and I spend so much time with him now, talking to him, teaching him new words, and he's learned to say Rachel. He says, "Rachel pretty, Rachel good," and it makes me smile. It makes me feel loved by this little parrot who saved my life without even knowing it. I truly believe that God puts certain animals in our lives for a reason, and Mango was meant to expose Mark's lies, was meant to save me from wasting more years with the man who was living a completely false life. And I'm so grateful to him, so grateful to this little South American parrot who just wanted to repeat what he heard and accidentally exposed a federal crime. And I tell him every day that he's a good bird, the best bird, my hero bird. And he just squawks and says, "Linda," and I laugh now. I actually laugh because it's not painful anymore. It's just a reminder of how I survived, how I got out, how I'm free now. Looking back, I can see so many signs I missed, so many red flags I ignored, like how Mark was always so encouraging about me staying in Miami, how he never complained about me being gone, how he seemed so happy and content when I came home on weekends. Of course he was happy. He was living with Linda all week and then getting to see me on weekends. He had everything he wanted. 2 women, 2 lives, and I was working myself to death in Miami thinking I was supporting our future, when really I was just giving him space to betray me. And it makes me angry, so angry, that I was so naive, so trusting. But my therapist says that's not a flaw. Trusting your partner isn't a flaw. It's normal. It's healthy. Mark's betrayal is the flaw. Mark's lies are the problem, not my trust. And I'm trying to believe that, trying to forgive myself for not seeing what was right in front of me. Everything happens for a reason, even the terrible things, even the things that break us and make us question everything. They happen to teach us something, to make us stronger, to redirect us toward a better path. And this whole nightmare with Mark and Linda and the bigamy and the FBI and everything, it taught me that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can survive something I thought would destroy me, that I can rebuild my life from nothing and come out okay on the other side. And I'm doing that now. I'm rebuilding, I'm healing, I'm learning to trust again, learning to be happy again. And it's hard, it's really hard, but I'm doing it. One day at a time, with Mingo by my side, squawking and saying, "Rachel pretty," and making me laugh when I want to cry. Mark tried to reach out a few times from jail. He wrote me letters saying he was sorry, saying he never meant to hurt me, saying he loved me and Linda both and didn't know how to choose. And I threw the letters away without finishing them because I don't care. I don't care about his excuses or his apologies. He made his choices and now he's facing the consequences. And I'm making my choices too. I'm choosing to move forward, choosing to focus on myself and my animals and my life, choosing to be happy without him. And it feels good. It feels really good to finally put myself first, to finally say, no, I'm not going to accept this treatment. I'm not going to stay with someone who lied to me for years, who committed a federal crime, who built an entire second family behind my back. I'm going to leave, and I'm going to be okay. And I am okay. I'm more than okay. I'm great. Linda and I don't talk much, but we're cordial. We're both victims of the same man. We both lost years of our lives because of his lies. And there's a strange bond in that. A
peculiar understanding that only we can have. I hope she's okay. I hope she sorts out her immigration situation. I hope her children are okay. They didn't ask for any of this. They're innocent in all of this. And I hope Mark thinks about them when he's in prison. I hope he realizes what he threw away, what he destroyed. But honestly, I don't think he will. I don't think he's capable of that kind of self-reflection. I think he'll just feel sorry for himself and blame everyone else, blame me for working in Miami, blame Linda for believing him, blame the FBI for investigating him, blame everyone but himself.
To everyone watching this, to everyone who has been betrayed by someone they trusted, someone they loved, I want you to know that you will survive this. You will overcome this, even if it seems impossible now, even if you want to give up. You will get to the other side and come out stronger, wiser, and more cautious about who you trust. And that's not a bad thing. That's growth. That's learning. That's becoming the person you are meant to be. So don't give up. Keep going, keep healing, keep believing that better days will come, because they will. I promise they will. I am living proof of that. Thank you, Mango. Thank you for being my hero. Thank you for saying Linda, Linda, Linda until I couldn't ignore it anymore. Thank you for exposing the truth, even without understanding what you were doing. You were just repeating what you heard, but you saved my life. You saved me from years of lies, betrayals, and living a false life with a man who's never truly mine. And I will never forget that. I will never stop being grateful to you. You are the best son, the best pet, the best bird in the world, and I love you so much. And to everyone watching, if your pet is acting strangely, if it's doing something unusual, pay attention. Listen. It may be trying to tell you something important. It may be trying to save you like Mango saved me. So trust your pets, trust your instincts, and trust that you deserve more than someone who lies, cheats, and commits serious crimes. Because you deserve it. We all deserve it. And anyone who can't give us honesty, loyalty, and respect doesn't deserve us. I sent this email because I watched the video of the woman who discovered something vulgar, extremely vulgar and intimate of a mistress in her house when she arrived home from a trip unexpectedly. A sign that the husband was relaxed and the two lovers sleeping soundly in the couple's bed? That's disgusting. I don't know if I'm exaggerating. Tell me if you agree. You can be honest. But I think the disrespect is great. And it was her dog who showed it. It was the golden retriever who almost dragged the sofa to get that thing they were using as if the house were theirs. This type of person doesn't respect their own marriage, doesn't respect a simple relationship of trust. I wish I could put their real names, but I can't. So at least here's a story to keep you all alert. Always stay on your toes, girls, because we deserve the best. That's it.